Yes, it's Mark and Pete.
Hello and welcome to the show. More colourful conversations with Mark and Pete. This is the show dedicated to religion, politics and business. Now, each week, Clergyman Pete and businessman Mark debate an important topic. Now, this week, this is a show which is going to be dedicated to how to succeed in management. Well, when we think about the concept of management, we typically tend to think about commerce, but it does apply to church life as well. Now, there are many principles of business, and many people have documented the best practices that help businesses succeed. I will call out what I believe, from my experience, are some of those pillars of success. But before we do, I'm going to ask Clergyman Pete what he thinks are the key principles of management. So, Pete, what do you think, being a church leader, makes a good manager?
Well, here I would distinguish between managing and leading. I think there were certain principles about a good leader. We've dealt with that in a separate episode. When I talk about a good manager, is someone who has these, certainly in the church context, has these two attributes. One is an ability to organize their own work, to organize their own priorities, so that they have everything in position, so that they're not putting any disorder onto other people. And the second thing is that they can relate well to other people, that they can listen well, they can understand how other people feel. The best way to have done that is to have done the things that you're asking other people to do. So I think those are the two things. One is an ability with administration, organization, and the other thing is being able to relate to other people. Basically, it's a people job at heart.
Yes. Well, if you are going to succeed in management, there are, in what I believe, are 10 pillars of success. I'm going to start with the first one, which is about know your market, effectively know your customer. It's crucial that you do that because a lot of people will have very good products, they'll have excellent service, but sometimes they don't always know the customer. Perhaps ironically, although they have what they perceive to be a very good product, is it something that the customer needs today? And the point being is that customers' businesses evolve all the time. Now, you may have a very good product and it may have served its purpose, for many years, but products need to evolve. So if you don't keep that relationship with the customer, that is critical.
Yeah.
The second thing is, which is sort of related, which is do your research. Now, ironically, a lot of people don't do this. So what often will happen is that although they may actually talk to their customer, they may not know necessarily that competitors are coming in with new products, new innovations. Perhaps the market has changed. Remember, you might be a small business and you need to know who is your competition in your catchment area. But if you're an international organization, of course, there are many diverse cultures, languages, and even policies that have changed. So, for example, if law changes, you have to keep pace with that as well. So that's one thing. Now, here's something else, which I think I'll just throw this over to you, Clergyman Pete, which is about know your numbers and your costs. So you've got to learn how to manage your business, i.e. what's coming into your business, what's going out of your business. Yeah. So let me ask you, how do you actually manage your church funds?
Yes, well, this is where I think it's crucial to have the right people in place. You see, someone who is a manager in a church is not necessarily the leader. I mean, you could be the preacher and the vicar with no real administrative abilities, so you need that to be done by someone else. Now, the finances in the church will be headed up by a treasurer, the equivalent in churches and other charitable organisations of a finance director, and this person would be in charge of managing that. However, under the leadership of the vicar or pastor and the team around them. So the abilities needed to do that and to manage money, to manage finances, are not the same as the ability to preach a good sermon. They're different things, different people. So you need to have a good manager to manage that side of it. Now, in some larger churches from a different denomination to me would call that something like the executive pastor or something like that. So that's how we go about it. We'd have someone who specialised in that area to manage that.
Yes. Well, now I've covered 3 points off my pillars of success, but here's the fourth one, which is about being different. Now, the point behind this is that you may actually produce a product which is very similar to a lot of your competitors, but the thing that you need to understand is that customers will often come to you because you have to add value. What is it that you've got that no one else can actually provide? And I think that ingredient is really important. So it doesn't matter whether you're a bakery and producing wonderful cakes, or whether you're a manufacturing company producing, say, some springs, or possibly some intricate circuit boards, or even some elaborate software. The point being is that you have to find that element which is different, because ultimately that's the ingredient that will give your competitors a competitive, your competition, to effectively eradicate the competition. If the customers know that they can get something from you that they can't get from anywhere else, then that helps their business as well.
Yes.
So that's one thing. And then the one which I would say comes after that, which is be innovative. So if you like, my fifth point here is that they are interlinked. All of these are not isolated. Everything is integrated. But if you know that you can innovate and you can produce products and services that will constantly keep you at the forefront of technology or even service, then it means that you can transcend not just only a local market, that your innovation can also work across different territories. And there are many companies who pride themselves on innovation. Simply copying and being a me too is not good enough. So I guess my question to you from a church point of view, and this is slightly difficult, I guess, from possibly a church point of view, which is, how do you differentiate yourself from your competition?
Well, I think differentiation among churches is very important. In fact, I've long been an advocate of encouraging differences between denominations, differences between local churches. That's because different churches can be more effective in serving the pastoral needs of different people if they have a different way of running entirely, and also they can reach out evangelistically better if they run in a different way. Just to give 2 examples, the church of which I am employed as effectively a pastor, called a vicar in my particular denomination, there's a hierarchical structure. Not a very rigid one, but there is a hierarchical structure to how the church is run. So each individual local church is under the authority, to a certain extent, of the diocese. There's a higher level. I say to a certain extent because there's a lot of autonomy in the local church. Whereas other churches, there would be definitely the local church is the highest point of decision making, is a committee or a person in the local church. So they would be able to respond in different ways. Another way you could say is some churches will have different styles of worship and music, and so they'd be very different. But that's perhaps a different area. What we're talking about is the way they run, and the way they run do change the way you relate to the local community and how you can reach out to them. So I think it's very in the same ways it's good to have different companies so that you get the variety, so that the customer wins. In the same way with churches, you're reaching out to people. So in effect, in a way, it's the same thing.
Well, so at the halfway point of my pillars of success,
Yes.
I'm going to sort of take a slightly different tack here and sort of explain where it can go wrong. So now we talk about succeeding in management, but what is it that when it does go wrong? And this is when perhaps managers don't listen to people. This is a poem called Seagull Management. Dear servants, my business view looks over you, and I stand well above the queue. All that I survey just kneel and pray, grovelling low from day to day. I make a noise and cause much stress when I fly in and dump my mess. As you look up and then I look down, I see your nose is very brown. You operate far beneath my status, just little weeds to my climbing clematis. I spend time with my head in the clouds, oblivious of the working crowds. We think on many different levels. I see you all as busy little devils, from great heights wielding much power. It's great nesting in corporate ivory tower. Your lofty, aloof senior executive. The point,
Yes.
point being,
what's wrong with that
in business, how many people can see that actually maybe some senior executives perhaps are not really getting to the grassroots of their business. Now, interestingly, this concept of seagull management is a defined term, meaning that effectively this idea that people fly in, cause a mess, whiz away, and leave all the underlings to do the necessary cleanup. Yes. Now, it's strange that, of course, isn't just in business, whether that's small, medium, or large, but of course it can happen in church life. So let me come on to my next pillar of success. This is the bit that people should look at, which is really a follow-on from the poem, which is don't be aloof. Actually invest in your staff. Skills are really important. You've got to look at training. They are your stakeholders. If we look, say, for example, of companies that have succeeded very well, look at, say, something like John Lewis. This is a retail department who have had many, many decades of success, particularly in the United Kingdom and to a certain extent abroad, where what they've done is they've allowed their staff to become stakeholders in the business. They actually do have an ownership. Now, I'm not saying that every company can do that, but investing in your people, gaining recognition, and reward, not just necessarily financial, but praise, is absolutely imperative to make the business succeed. So that's definitely one pillar. The other one is invest.
Yes.
Well, now I say invest because, of course, obviously you want to earn money and you want to put that money back in. But ironically, a lot of people don't always do that. They run what they call a very lean machine. Well, to me, sometimes that suggests that maybe there's some compromise, whether that's on the right tools, the right equipment, the right resources. Because if you don't equip people effectively and you don't invest in the business or in your research and development, you're not going to succeed long term. And particularly in times like today, when really things are very competitive because the economy is bad, maybe, you need to legislate for not just today, but you need to invest for the future as well. Yeah. And we definitely talk about long-termism on the Mark and Pete Show. And that brings me to my 8th point, which is long and short, the short and the long. You can't have one without the other. A lot of people will drive their business today quarter by quarter. Yes, they need to, because maybe they're a publicly quoted company. And of course, those disciplines are very important. But at the same time, you also need a long-term plan. Similarly, you can't just have a long-term plan without having short-term executional plans. It's good to have visions, and you need that vision, but you need the combination. And I think if you do adhere to those sort of strategies, then it means that you can be flexible. Now, the other one, which I think is very important, which is about having your third-party stakeholders. You're only ever as good as your suppliers. So my 9th point here is that if you have a good supplier network, some people say consultants, some people may say that it could be contractors that help you with your business. Don't treat them badly. Pay them with their terms that they always adhere or should adhere to. And at the same time, see them as an extension of your business. Don't think of them just purely as something, as another party, which is outside of your realm. Actually, they should be an extension of what you do. They represent your brand just as much as you represent your own brand. And I think that that's critical. Now, my 10th point here is really about the business model. Now, what do we mean by this? A lot of entrepreneurs have certainly talked about this a great deal. And that is that if you define what your business model is, i.e. the mechanism in which you trade, whether that's a term of license, whether that's a term of trade, look at that very, very carefully. Many people will go into business and they'll have a good product. They possibly have good staff. They may even invest. but the mechanism in which they actually trade is somewhat free and random. Yes, they may know their market, but having a good business model and sticking to that model is crucial. Yeah. But also, that model needs to be flexible. Yes. And the point here is that if times are good, yes, your products and your services will be purchased, but you also need to adapt when things go into a downturn. Yeah. And therefore, if your business model is flexible, not only will you understand it, but your customers will understand it. And that's crucial, because if both parties understand the way that you can work with customers and they understand the terms in which you trade, then that will also differentiate you as being an example to good business practice.
Yeah. I just to comment on those just generally. I'm not going to go through every point that you. It was the 10 points altogether. It would take a long time to go through each one, but I think that what I've learned from you there is there's a sort of a holistic approach. You need to have basically all that in place to have a successful company. And I would say maybe this isn't true of everyone, but if you to have a CEO who can function well in all those areas. You're not going to find. You're going to be very limited to trying to find someone who can do all that. They need a team around them. So actually, the managing of the company is done by a team of people. That would be right, wouldn't it? I mean, you're not going to find a CEO. So and that when I said at the start of the episode, well, I see these as different, being a leader and being a manager. What you've outlined there, I see is the whole thing. That's leading the company, that's providing the vision for the company, but it's also providing the way that vision is implemented. It's the whole thing that you've just outlined there, how to make something succeed. And when, just briefly putting it into a church level, there's a concept of church called a simple church, which was first outlined by Tom Rainer, the researcher into church growth. And he has a similar idea that you were putting forward just at the end there of saying, know your model. What is it that you're trying to achieve? So in growing a church, what is it that grows your church? Make sure you have a system in place to do that. Don't just, simply assume that it's going to happen just because we're a wonderful church. And in the same way, don't just assume that you've got a wonderful product so people are going to buy it. You've got to have a system in place. So I think that's fascinating, but it'd be very interesting to hear what other people have their experience in companies. I mean, have these pieces been missing from what you've just gone through, and that's why they've not succeeded? Or is there something else? Is there something else that needs to be done that will make a company grow?
Yes. Well, let me just end on a slightly whimsical note, which is a final thought on succeeding in management. So this is a final poem, which is called Ointment for Appointment. It's the remedy for saving your skin in business. First apply some well-oiled elbow grease, then rub both of your hands with glee, ensuring your line manager says their piece, even if irritation flares to some degree. Press very gently on a sensitive area, especially if you have had a scolding. Always remember to remain much warier if corporate cuts begin unfolding. Do not overdose too much on work or indulge by swallowing your pride. Wipe away any smile or smirk and cover your own backside. If your lack of substance needs camouflaging, liberally spread a well-targeted smear campaign. Now your clean application for ego massaging will place you high on the management chain. So there we go, listeners. Let us know what you think about how to succeed in management. We've given a few points, but we'd love to hear from you. Log on to markandpete.com and fill out the contact form, contact@markandpete.com, or follow us at Mark and Pete on Twitter. So join us again next time for more colourful conversations with Mark and Pete.